Hello everyone, my name is Meihua Sintikhe Evellyne. I'm from Management International class, batch 2018. I'm a student in the Faculty of Economy and Business, Universitas Tanjung Pura. In this video, I will present first chapter from Effective Communication in the third book about understanding communication skills. Let's start. Before we start, there are 6 important points that will be discussed to understand communication skills. First is defining communication, second is overcoming barriers, third, communicating at work, fourth, planning your approach, fifth, matching the message, and the last is choosing your medium. Think of communication as a process involving senders and receivers who encode and decode messages that are transmitted by various media and that may be impeded by noise. The aim of this process is to elicit feedback in order to generate a desired effect or outcome. In communication, we must understanding each other. Humans aren't the only beings who communicate. Virtually all forms of life are capable of sending and receiving messages. People, however, are the only living organism known to communicate. And in communication, we must understanding the principles. Communication involves a number of principles which apply across time and cultures. The process is always dynamic, continuous, circular, unrepeatable, irreversible, and complex. There are 4 levels of communication. First is intrapersonal. Intrapersonal is communication within ourselves, sending message to various parts of our bodies, thinking things over, or working silently on a problem. Second is interpersonal. Interpersonal is communication between or among people, sending message from one another to another, verbally and non-verbally, with the hope of transferring meaning from one person to another. And the third is organizational, is communication in the context of an organization, sending and receiving message through various layers of authority and using various channels to discuss topics of interest to the group we belong to or the company we work for. And the last is mass or public. Mass or public is sending message from one person or source to many people simultaneously through television, the internet, or print media. Broadly speaking, there are 2 barriers that keep us from communicating successfully: the operations of our bodies and our minds, and our assumptions that other people understand and react to the word in the same way that we do. This is unblocking your communications. The information we receive about the word comes from our senses. It is possible, however, for our senses to be impaired or for the source of the message to provide inadequate information to be reliably decoded. In sending message to others, we must be sensitive to the fact that they may not see, hear, touch, taste, or smell in the same way we do. Second is ensuring understanding. Communication is more than sending and receiving message. If the message has been delivered but not understood, no communication has taken place. Everything from the culture in which we live to the norms of standards of groups to which we belong can influence how we perceive the message, events, and experience of everyday life. Even individual mindsets, such as holding stereotypes, can set up barriers affecting that we understand and how we react to outside stimuli. Learn to recognize the barriers likely to block your communications and focus on what you can do to overcome them. When speaking to someone, for example, constantly monitor their reaction to confirm that you are being fully understood. There are 6 ways overcoming barriers to communication. First is consider culture. Be aware that different backgrounds, education, and experience give people different expectations. Your way of seeing the world is not the only one.
Second is banish prejudice. Never make a judgment before knowing the facts about a situation. Acknowledge that you are usually working with incomplete data. Third is fight stereotype. Don't assume that all members of a group share the same characteristic. Put aside any stereotypical views you may have. Treat each person as an individual. Fourth, control your feelings. Try to present your arguments rationally rather than emotionally and accept that other people may have strong feeling about a subject. And the last is watch your language. Recognize that language has different levels of meaning. People will respond differently to the same words, especially if the words are vague or general. Next, communicating at work. Communication is a skill that is central to the human experience. We each know how to do it. We've done it since birth and receive additional practice each day. So why is it so difficult to communicate on the job? As a manager, it is important to understand how the workplace changed the nature of communication for both sender and receiver. First, we must tailoring your approach, and the second, you must adapting to your environment, and the last, matching the culture. Planning your approach. Getting people to listen to what you say, read what you write, or look at what you show them isn't easy. How do you persuade them that paying attention to your message is in their best interest? The key to ensuring that your communication hits the mark is detailed planning. First, you must choosing your approach. The choices you make, from the content of message you send to the medium you select, all have a direct impact on the outcome of your communication. Whatever the situation, ask yourself about the following. First is message. What should your message contain? How should your message impart the information? Should your message be broad or detailed? Second is medium. What's the best way to send this message? Is one medium quicker or cheaper than another? Will one offer a better opportunity for feedback or carry more detail? Third is code. Will your audience understand the words you have used? Will the words and image mean the same thing to the audience as they mean to you? Do these words and image have multiple meanings for various audience? And the fourth is feedback. How will you know if you've communicated successfully? Will the audience response be delayed? Will be filtered through other sources? And the last is noise. How many other senders and message are out there? Whose message traffic are you competing with? Will others try to deflect, distort, or disable your communication attempts? Second, you must understanding your audience. Who are these people you were communicating with? Ask a few simple questions about the people in your audience. Once you know more about them, you can find ways to motivate them to listen. Third, considering ethnicity. The ethnic origin of members of your audience may be worth knowing, but don't overestimate its value. The utility of this information may lie in knowing which issues and positions are of greatest concern to members of a particular ethnic group. The limitation lies in knowing that you cannot reasonably the views of all members of such a group, sensitivity to ethnic issues and language style should be sufficient as you prepare a speech. Fourth, audience backgrounds. When you are assessing your audience, look for any similarities in personal backgrounds. And the last is socioeconomic factors. For certain forms of communication, knowing the economic status and lifestyle of your audience is especially important. Gain as much information as you can about the following: occupation, income, socioeconomic status. Targeting your communication. There are 6 ways to targeting your communication. First is work within objectives. All of your communication should be consistent with and directly supportive of the strategic objective of your organizations, its vision, values, and beliefs. Second is adapt to your audience. Appeal to the basic needs like shelter, safety, or social approval of your intended audience or their senses like use motion, color, and sound. What can you do to hold their attention? And the third is explain your position. Use words that your audience will understand and concepts that can relate to. This means, of course, that you must know how your audience are, as well as what they know and how they feel about the subject. Fourth is motivate your audience. Encourage your audience to accept and act on your message by appealing to authorities that they respect. The social conformity displayed by others they know or admire, the rationality of your argument of their desire to behave in consistent ways. And the fifth is keep them on side. Make your audience resistant to counter persuasion by asking for a tangible, preferably public, commitment from them or reminding them of the benefits to be derived from doing as you ask. And the last is manage expectation. Always let your audience know what you to expect and deliver what you promise. Nevertheless, people are disappointed only if their expectations exceed what they actually receive. Matching the message. Once you know something about the individuals who make up your audience, begin to think about how to approach them. You will need a strategy to help devise the right message and to choose the most effective method of communication for your audience. There are 2 ways to matching the message. First is hiding the right knowledge level. A true knowledge of what your audience already knows about your subject is useful in a number of ways. First, it tells you where to begin. Don't speak down to the audience by explaining fundamentals they already understand. Second, don't start above their heads. Begin at a point they are comfortable with and move on from there. Second, managing emotion. Even more important than what the audience knows about your subject is how they feel about it. You need to tailor your words carefully to what the emotional response of your audience is likely to be. People are much more open-minded on topics they are indifferent about than they are on topics they care about passionately. If you misjudge an emotional response, your communication will fail. Establishing the audience's rule. Your message may need to reach only the audience in front of you, or you may be relying on those people to pass on the message to others. Think about everyone who might see or hear your message, including primary audience, secondary audience, gatekeepers, opinion leaders, and key decision makers.
Choosing your medium. Many managers choose a form of communication instinctively and not always for the right reasons. Write a letter because it seems quicker or easier. In fact, just two factors should govern your choice of medium for any message. You should think first about the preference of the person or audience receiving your message, and the second about the characteristic and benefit of speaking versus those of writing. First is when to write. Writing produces a permanent record, can be used to convey great detail, is often much more precise, and can be used for careful wording. If it is important that you say something in a specific or exact way, you may want to write it down. And of course, if your audience has a preference for source material or large amounts of detail, such as table or large lists, you can provide that information as an appendix or attachment to a memo, report, or proposal. Keep in mind that you may have to share your message with many people, and it may be impractical or impossible to speak to each of them. Writing is a precise, persuasive way may be the best approach to influence your audience. And when to speak, speaking provides a richer context. It includes the use of nonverbal cues and allows for more emotion. This communication form is less rigid, as it leaves no permanent record. It may also be much quicker. Speaking to others also invites their participation. It may be the best way to elicit ideas, swipe up the other people's feelings, and even discover any possible objection to your message before decisions have been made and formalized in writing. A conversation or discussion has a more transitory feel to it. It is flowing and flexible, and less permanent and formal than written forms of communication.